Ladies and gentlemen, the results are here. The Guyver 3 has won Movie of 2025.
The Guyver.
It doesn't exist yet. However, it will be here before the end of the year. And when it does, all other movies are completely disqualified.
That's a real thing. Welcome to Roll Credits, a podcast about connections both in film and in life. I'm Erin.
I'm Mandy.
Now, each episode we aim to explore a cast member, actor, director, or even a concept that ties a set of movies together. We talk about the history and the context of the movie, and we have some fun while discussing our own personal opinions. This is an Armbar Studios production. For more information on all of our projects, you can visit armbarstudios.com. And so, the date is January 5th. It is Sunday, and a winter storm's a-coming. This is a bonus episode. Yes, you've probably noticed by the title that, this is not part of our Stephen King arc, because this is, it's been an amazing year for movies.
It has.
We've watched some incredible movies in 2024, and we wanted to give you, just some rundowns of some of the best movies that we watched in 2024, ones that, we haven't really covered on the podcast.
Yes. To pull back the curtain, we are a real-life couple, and every week we watch a double feature together. There are movies that we watch with friends on Discord, movies we watch then when we're in a mood, or just movies we see in theaters. Basically, we watch a lot of movies.
Yeah. Whole bunch of movies. Now, we're going to be going through some top 10 lists we've made, which at the end of the episode we'll tell you both our individual top 10s.
So this may seem counterintuitive, but I should say that this is not a top 10 of 2024 movies. So some of our movies are going to be 2024 movies, but this is actually just a top 10 of the best movies that we've seen. And now you may ask why. It's because, really, I think you should watch all of these movies too. Maybe these films have been on your watch list for ages. Maybe this is just a really good guide of films to put on your watch list. Either way, I can guarantee every film in our top 10 will, if nothing else, be interesting and worth your time. Before we get to our top 10, we did want to talk about 3 films that we saw this year that are not in our top 10, but are such anomalies that we otherwise have no excuse to talk about what we wanted to and dedicate time to them. So don't listen to this expecting this to be our honorable mentions. Since they didn't make our best of the year, we'll also end each of these blurbs by bestowing each of them an award.
We have some very fun awards to give out. The Oscars Eat Your Heart Out. So the first movie that I would like to bestow a special award to is Death Machine. It is a 1994 science fiction horror flick in which a mad hacker and a scientist, played by Brad Dourif, gets fired from his futuristic company and as revenge activates his weapon, the titular Death Machine. I found out about this movie because every October we do a horror challenge and try and cram as many horror movies into October as possible. And one of the challenges was pick a wild card movie. And someone in the thread I was in had watched Death Machine. I saw the poster, which is of what I thought was like a metal Freddy Krueger glove covered in blood. And I was like, well, yeah, sure. Why not? It's free on Tubi. And I put it on, and it is unbelievable. Like, I could not believe what I was watching.
I think I'm a pretty seasoned horror person, so I've recognized a lot of popular horror films, even not so popular horror films. I had no idea that Death Machine existed until you just brought it up to me.
Yeah.
Although, I'll say more so than maybe any other decade, the 90s was really the decade as far as technology is going to kill us all.
Oh, yeah. It's really funny because I describe this movie tonally as the sequel to Hackers. But the thing is, it came out a year before Hackers, which is pretty funny. But yeah, very much the same kind of absolutely whacked out sci-fi horror full of absurd, like, macho posturing. I can't even describe, like, the dialogue is so ridiculous. and very, very fun. Yeah, Brad Dourif is giving like his 120% performance here.
So this is sort of their take on movies, kind of like Hardware, like Brain Scan, relevant to the arc we're currently in, The Lawnmower Man. I'll say they had like one set and this weird robot, and like that's it. That's all you need to make a movie, really.
Yeah. The set is hilarious because I thought it was supposed to be taking place in like a modern day office building, but then it feels more like a giant spaceship from, far in the future.
Both this and Hardware, they have this thing where it's like, well, we want to do a sci-fi story. We don't have the budget for a sci-fi story. Okay, so this all happens in this one specific building. Just trust me, there's space out here. There's definitely sci-fi ships and shit like that. They have like the occasional scenes with this stuff, but for the most part, like they keep it here. It's very budget centric.
Yes, and it is a blast. But what's really funny about this is that I discovered that this movie had multiple cuts. There's the international cut. There's the cut we watched, which was a 4:3 letterboxed version on Tubi that we got for free, which I believe is the theatrical cut, but maybe it's sourced from a VHS tape. I don't know. Because I'm pretty sure this movie has a pretty, standard widescreen aspect ratio out there somewhere.
I don't think we're ever going to cover this on the show.
Mm-hmm.
A big reason for it, I think like the biggest name associated with this, other than Brad Dourif, is the director, Steve Norrington. He's like a special effects director in Hollywood. But really, he's only directed this movie and then 3 other movies. One of them is Blade. People love Blade. One of the other ones is The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
So he was very, I'd say like he seemed like he was more of like a comic book movie guy, but this one was just an exception, I guess. There is definitely nerd stuff in this, and I say this lovingly. There's a part where, like, I shit you not, they have this nerd character who does an uppercut to the robot dog thing. And yells, sure you can, like Street Fighter.
Yeah. He says Shuriken. He doesn't even say...
Yeah, he doesn't say sure you can.
And every character is named after a different, like, horror villain or character or director, of course. Like, of course, you're gonna have a Ripley, or you're gonna have there's literally a guy called John Carpenter. Like, that's just his name.
Oh, and don't forget, they have 2 characters named Wayland and Yutani, like the organization from Aliens, Wayland Yutani.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's kind of wild that they thought they could get away with this. But I'm gonna give this movie my award.
What's the award?
The award is, I would like to congratulate Death Machine in getting my quickest physical impulse buy award. Because halfway through the movie, I looked up this movie just out of curiosity to see if it was available on anything. And Kino Lorber had a copy with multiple cuts, deleted scenes, commentary, and a beautiful slipcover. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen Kino Lorber offer, up to and including Highway to Hell, which we also own. I'm buying this, and as such, I purchased it halfway through the movie and have not regretted it a single second since.
We need to have Death Machine versus the Guyver.
We need Death Machine versus the Guyver.
All right. I think the first movie I actually want to talk about is called Hells. So we actually watched this on a whim for free on Tubi.
Yeah, big win for Tubi.
The free streaming network. It is an anime film from 2008 about a blue-haired girl who dies on her way to school and ends up in hell. And then in hell, she ends up attending Hell High School, where everybody else is a demon, and then she gets caught in this huge conflict conspiracy of biblical proportions, and I mean this quite literally. Cain and Abel is definitely a major plot point in this movie. And I would not want to say how. Needless to say, just believe me when I tell you that things just go off the rails. If you're a seasoned anime watcher, I'd say think of something with the same frenetic energy as Kill la Kill or Gurren Lagann. It is fun, it's funny, it's very strange, and it goes way harder than I ever thought it would.
Yeah. It is notable to say that this movie is like 2 hours long, which we did not realize. We thought we were going to watch an episode of an anime, because we were like flipping through and we were like, well, this is called Hells. Let's watch Hells. And we click play because we're like, oh, it's probably just one episode, because I think it was in like the TV section or something. And instead it's this 2 hour long anime movie about the girl getting isekai'd into hell. There's a volleyball game. There's a school. It goes off the rails. It really does have wonderful energy, though. What I love about it is that it does to Christian theology what like we've been doing to Greek and Roman theology this entire forever, in that it really truly mythologizes the Bible in very fun ways.
So it has this shit. It has a beautiful art style, kind of this scratchy, stylized,
yeah, like kind
thing.
of like pen work. It's beautiful.
Maybe a little Tim Burton-esque, but like, and then also inexplicably they have a demon who's dressed up as Elvis named Helvis.
Yes, Elvis, the hellish Elvis, character of the year.
And I'm not even joking. He is maybe the second or third most important character in the entirety of this movie. It is unbelievable. They go for extremely complex emotions with Elvis.
Oh, yes. Listen, if you want a movie where you'll be surprised at Helvis, then you could pick no worse than here, and pick no better either. It is a fascinating film. And also, this was from 2006, I think?
2008.
Yeah, okay, 2008. I remember us watching and thinking, wait, is this like new? No. This has been known since 2008. Why is nobody talking about Helvis, the hellish Elvis?
I think this was a discotheque thing. Like, they just kind of dropped this on everybody. Yeah. And it's like, where the hell did this come from? Where have you been sitting on this for years? But no, like, they have a whole dub there. I think it's actually done by Team 4-Star, the people who do Dragon Ball Abridged.
Wow. That's fantastic.
It feels very professional, though. Anyways, so I'm going to give this the award of, had I discovered this movie when it came out in 2008, I would have been extremely annoying and vocal about how much I love it.
Yes. Congratulations to Hells for getting the Shinesman Award. That's another dumb joke. But yeah, that movie was wild. A lovely time, though. Really, a lovely time. So next, I would like to present my award here to the movie Computer Chess. From 2013, it's a quiet movie documenting a 1980s conference of computer programs who are pitting their computers against each other to see if one of them can win a chess tournament. From there on, you peek into a world where computers are on the cusp of ubiquity, and humans are about to discover things that will change history unbeknownst to them. And I'm going to give this award at the top so we can talk about it after. Because this gets the award for the I can't believe it's not a documentary award. Because that's what's so interesting about this movie.
Through no fault of this movie, I'm going to say that I was extremely tired while watching this one. And you know, the weird thing is it just ended up putting me in this dreamlike state, which I think worked. It starts out very, very realistic, and then things go off the rails. I don't really know the director very well, Andrew Bujalski.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about this movie. Literally, I saw the poster. This is a movie that I judged by its cover because it has this gorgeous poster that looks like a big box computer game from the 70s, and it looks amazing.
All I know is that he was apparently the director of one of the first ever mumblecore movies. He might even be the person who invented the genre.
It's really funny they call it mumblecore, and it's like people seem to know what that means. I'm just watching. It's just like, so do you mean like it's like a realistic sort of speaking style? Like, everyone kind of talking over each other, like it's meant to kind of evoke sort of realism, like peeking into this world where they're either aware of they're being recorded, because this whole thing does it's kind of a found footage in a way, or a documentary. Like I said, I can't believe it's not a documentary, where it's kind of like tracking a lot of these nerds, and canonically they are being recorded by someone with a video camera. But I don't know. Did he really invent mumblecore when?
I think all genres are inexplicable in a sense.
Yeah.
You know it when you can see it. Like, for example,
fair enough.
Judd Apatow's movies all definitely have the exact same vibe. Same goes for Wes Anderson. You could probably put them into a genre of their own. But I think because of that, if somebody ever tries to do their style, they're going to say, oh, this is just a Wes Anderson movie. This is just a Judd Apatow movie.
That is
and
very
I think
fair.
that is kind of the idea with like mumblecore is if you make something very similar to this movie, then we should probably have like a name for this stuff.
Yeah, fair. I really love how it uses black and white film with a precise splash of color here and there. I just think it's a really interesting movie that when I watched it, I just couldn't really get it out of my head. I can't say that it is one of my best of the years at all, because I feel that it's very slow, very dreamlike, not as, I don't know, gripping as I feel like it should be in so many senses. And yet, I just could not get enough of it. I think part of the appeal really is that it absolutely does capture the era. Like, it is very, 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 very accurate, again, to the point that people thought it was a documentary, and I really like that.
It's definitely a very smart movie, which I like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It gets points for being just such a unique film-going experience.
My next one that I want to talk about is Detention. Not the 2019 horror movie based on the video game of the same name about living in Taiwan under its White Terror era, although, to be honest, I love that movie too.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm actually wanting to talk about the 2011 Detention, which is a comedy horror flick. And I'm going to say, like hells, I had zero clue what to expect, but I watched this and the experience I had was so brain-breaking after about 20 minutes that as soon as I finished it, I brought it to Erin. I told her to sit down and watch it as soon as she could. And I would just want to say, last month, I watched two Jim Carreys team up on screen as Ivo Robotnik and Gerald Robotnik in a film adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2, complete with a soundtrack that regularly uses Crush 40 songs, with Keanu Reeves playing Shadow the Hedgehog, and it is not even 10% as odd of an experience as 2011 Detention is for me. I don't know if I can describe this movie in a way that will do it justice. Think something a little like Scream for the 2010s, I guess. Just it leans a lot harder on nonsensical parody, and it doesn't even try to tell a coherent and satisfying narrative.
Yeah, it is bubblegum flavored, absolutely electric hyper pop of a movie. Like, it is going so fast, and it tosses so many plot points at you and reverses so many things to the point that by the end of it, and I don't say this like in a derogatory manner, and I never like to say this because I feel that a lot of people do say it in like the most boring possible way. But when I say that I had no idea what was going on by the end of it, I understood broadly the plot, but lost track of so many details that I could not remember what character was who and what their relationship was and why. And you will understand exactly what I mean if you watch this.
In theory, it's kind of a slasher. You do get students getting picked off by this bandaged prom queen character named Cinderella, who is really this part of this long-running slasher series in universe. This film has to have been written in sequence, I think, because it feels like every couple of minutes, the person writing this just thinks of a funny joke based on something that he just wrote into the script, and then he just decides to run with it and say, "This is the plot now."
Yeah. Like, it's like, oh, it's a slasher movie where a movie character comes to life. Oh, it's a Freaky Friday story. Oh, it's a time travel story. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. It's none of these things and all of these things, and everything is happening all at once. I wish I loved this movie. I'm gonna be honest with you, because if I was judging this movie based on the first, 30 minutes...
I think everybody here should watch the first 15 minutes. If you're listening to this, I am suggesting that you should just see if you can get adjusted to this film's tone. It literally hits you with joke after joke. Mm-hmm. And you're right, like, it does go too hard. This person was not really a director for movies. He was like a music video director.
Right.
He has made a lot of movies since then, some of which I've seen are very well acclaimed.
Well, that's the thing, is like, if the goal here was to make me want to watch more of the director, he succeeded. Because because like the first 30 minutes are cinematic perfection to me. Everything about them I absolutely loved, and I wanted 1,000 times more of it. And you don't really get that. You do and you don't. But if you want a movie with lots of interesting laughs, lots of broad, bold ideas, and some excellent funny lines, you can do a lot worse.
So I'll give this the award of most accurate depiction of a fever dream.
Very nice. Very nice. And speaking of something that's a bit of both, actually, we're going to be kind of combining sort of naturalistic mumblecore and fever dream punk movies with The Man Who Stole the Sun, a Japanese movie from Japan. Why did I say that? A Japanese movie, a very punk film about a science teacher who builds an atomic bomb in his apartment. It's from the 70s, and it is a fascinating film. Yeah, basically, it's about it. Like I said, the science teacher builds this bomb and then doesn't really know what to do, so he holds Japan hostage because he's sick of his baseball games being preempted. I think it's a real interesting depiction of sort of the malaise of Japanese youth at the time, as well as just sort of a really funny, dark satire of like, well, what if a normal person got all this power that we're giving to the world leaders?
My review for this movie was, imagine Death Note, but instead of the Death Note, Light just had a fucking atomic bomb. Yeah. And that's like basically what this is he has this ultimate power. Nobody really knows who he is, but he manages to threaten everybody with it. It is like sort of this horrific power fantasy in a sense.
Yeah, and there's this cat and mouse game. There's a whole story about the Rolling Stones coming to Japan, which is crazy. Like, it's super interesting because, like, basically this guy becomes kind of a celebrity because he keeps, like, calling in bomb threats to the radio station and at festivals and things, and they're, like, treating it as though this massive deal. And one of his demands is he wants to see the Rolling Stones, so they better get the Rolling Stones to do a concert in Japan. And everyone's like, yeah, we like the Rolling Stones. I'd love to go to a Rolling Stones concert in Japan. And so the Japanese public gets on his side because they're too sick of preempted baseball games and not being able to see the Rolling Stones. Like, it's very dark, very funny, very beautiful at points. It doesn't keep the momentum the whole way through, but it's absolutely one of those movies that just tickles the brain, and I really enjoyed it.
I think one of the best little wrinkles is very early on, before you even really know about this bomb threat, you see that the teacher actually stops a robber on like a class field trip.
Mm.
And from then on, this person is lauded as a hero out in public, while at the same time he is calling in these bomb threats and working on this atomic bomb in secret to just cause terror and everything. It really is, as Alfred Hitchcock describes it, like the bomb under the table. There's a bomb under this table between us. Nothing happens, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's an explosion. The public is surprised, but then prior to the surprise, it is seen as an ordinary scene of no special consequence. Now, let's take a suspenseful situation. The bomb is underneath the table, and the public knows it. In these same conditions, this innocuous conversation becomes fascinating because the public is participating in secret, and that, to me, is why this movie is so fun. The cops are trying to figure out who this terrorist guy is. The audience knows exactly who it is, but this whole time, it's like you're waiting for them to connect the dots, and I think that is awesome.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And so the award I want to give this is, because to watch this movie, we had to go and find like a website. I think it was called like Rare Films or something. Some super obscure website to find this movie, to watch it at all. And this is a movie, keep in mind, this is a movie that when it came out in Japan was a hit. This is considered a hit and a cultural touchstone. And yet it's nowhere. So this gets my award. I'm going to give it the award, the How Is This Not a Criterion Movie Yet award. Because come on. They need to release this. I would buy it instantly. It's such a weird, interesting film. And it sucks that it's not available anywhere.
And then my final extra movie is going to be the animated 2023 French tech-noir space opera, Mars Express. It is a Japanese movie from France.
Oh, man.
I feel like this movie just popped out of nowhere. To be honest with you, like we found this at like FYE.
Yeah, like I think neither of us had heard of it, and it was just like we walked into. We're very lucky that Suncoast still exists at our mall, and that our mall still exists. And we walk into Suncoast and just see it on the shelf, and we're like, "What's this? What is this?" Because the poster is really visually very striking.
I tried to look into it to see, like, is this just like a animated poster for some kind of like old school 80s movie? No, like it was like a full on modern adult animated movie, which, you don't really hear much about this stuff. This is basically shadow dropped by G Kids, as far as I could tell. They're the company that distributes all of the Ghibli movies, as well as many others. I'd say the setting is really what makes the premise for me. It's about this world where humans live alongside various types of androids, and it's about this human detective and her partner, who's this android replica of her dead partner with all of the human form's memories. And together they work to solve this case about a hacker. Yeah. And without giving too much away about the plot, it is just this big cyberpunk noir story.
It's very bleak. It asks a lot of questions, and the answers it gives are not always going to be ones that you want to hear, but it's so well done in that regard. It
tackles a lot of very difficult subjects and doesn't throw any punches, which I actually think is like a huge plus with it. Yeah.
I also find the animation to be really attractive. I know it's mostly just rotoscoping, but there's just something about it that I really love it. I think it ties really well to the world building.
Speaking of somebody who occasionally fires up dice and plays tabletop, I just want you to know that you want to look at how to make a really satisfying sci-fi or fantasy setting. Please look at Mars Express. The world building in this is really what informs the story and the characters and everything.
And it does it awesome. Really subtly too. It's never beating the viewer over the head with like, here's a perfect extreme explanation of everything and how it exactly works. It's just like, hey, this is an alien world. We are dropping you into this alien world. We are going to put you here, and you're just going to have to learn what androids are, what synthetics are. You're just going to have to accept that they have hologram heads and that they can be hacked and that there are, alcoholism detectors that that kind of get implanted on you when you're, going through Alcoholics Anonymous, or, this is how the world works. This is how the screens work. This is how there's a big floating brain in a jar kind of thing. It's like, this is how all of this works. you are going to accept this. You are going to understand this. We'll give you just enough so that you're not lost, and we will put you in this world. And it works because it's beautiful. It's so expansive and interesting that ever since we watched this movie, again, you mentioned tabletop. It's like, dude, I want a world Bible or a tabletop setting. Like, you can't really make a prequel or sequel or anything, but goddamn, I wanna do shit in this world.
You might be able to make a prequel, but I get you. So I will say, this isn't the most innovative of projects. I think if you're looking at this and you're a fan of anime, I think more than likely you know about stuff like Cowboy Bebop, you know about stuff like Trigun, and I definitely think that a Ghost in the Shell. I think all of this stuff has obvious influences on Mars Express, but as far as something that comes out in the 2020s, made out of nowhere in France, just this big passion project from a whole bunch of animators. Like, Jesus Christ, like, well, my award for this is more of this, please, because I just think that it's nice to have more than just this and, like, those animated DC movies that occasionally come out. Like, there's so many animators that are just straight up hungry for work. They are forced to work on like Newgrounds, or they are just doing YouTube stuff. And, you know, some of them really like this work, but also I just want to see these people have more jobs, more creative opportunities like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to point out, I'm pretty sure this is a conversation that we had where near the end, there's a long shot of a lot of robots that exist in this universe. And each and every one of them has a unique design where you can kind of tell there has been so much thought put into the type of robotics present in this universe. And that's something that if this was live action, if this was, you know, done through CG, like, there's no way they would have been able to pour this much effort into every single part of that. I'm reminded a lot of when Siskel and Ebert reviewed Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and how they talked about Gotham looking absolutely incredible in the big screen, and some of the set pieces that, and the same with Prince of Egypt. They said this about Prince of Egypt as well, in that if this was live action, like, they could not have done this so broadly, so meticulously, because what animation can do is give you this fantastical world at a scope that, you know, live action sets never could.
And I see so many scenes where you can see this on full display. Like, I think the big one that came to me every time I think about it is just the highway system in, I think it's Mars. Mars Express, but still.
Yeah, the highway system, the scene where there's the car chase. I think so, yeah. It's incredible. Like, it's such a gorgeous, interesting little set piece that's only there for that part of the movie. And it's like, dang, okay, yeah. It's very cool. It's very, very cool. And yeah, if nothing else, it's worth looking into for inspiration.
Do you think we've delayed this enough?
I think so.
On to the list.
On to the main event here. Our top 10 of the year. We went back and forth. We've shared a few of these. So again, we're going to give you our full top 10 at the very end of this. But we're going to go kind of back and forth and cover movies on both our lists. So number 10 on my list was a movie that came out at the end of 2023, so we saw it at the start of 2024. It is A24's movie, The Iron Claw, starring Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White, and it is, for my money, the greatest wrestling movie ever made. It chronicles the rise and the fall of the National Wrestling Alliance, and especially the doomed Von Erich family back in the 70s and 80s. And it is my number 10 because it is unbelievable. Because I think that as someone who loves wrestling, I'm very picky about my wrestling in media because I think it's so easy to get it wrong in a way that you become emotionally disingenuous when interacting with the art form. Maybe some people think that's taking it too seriously. Like, I love a good Hulk Hogan impression as much as anyone, but when tackling a story like the Von Erichs, you need to approach it with not just a story about the Von Erichs themselves, but also an understanding of how wrestling as an industry is both the greatest and the worst thing in the world. And of all people, Darren Aronofsky understood that with The Wrestler. And this is sort of the mirror image to The Wrestler. You take those two movies and you kind of understand both the ins and the outs of the wrestling business in really unique ways. And what I love about this movie is, Zac Efron's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Jeremy Allen White as Kerry Von Erich was also absolutely amazing. But the big thing is they understand, I guess, the camp and the power of pro wrestling. And then they understand what it feels like when the lights go on and everyone goes home. And being able to kind of match the tones of these two feelings in a movie that has some struggles as a biopic. But it's such a magnificent dramatic picture that I can't help but love it.
I think you nailed it on the head, really. I think as a period piece, as a biopic, this is probably one of the best films that I saw in 2023. Just as a pro wrestling movie specifically, like, you're right, this is the best one. I've never had the same love for The Wrestler that you do. I have seen it, but, I don't want to take that away from it. It didn't affect me as emotionally. I know it has for some people. This one, I think, perfectly captures the story of the Von Erichs. And I'll say, watching this in a theater 15 days into January as a longtime fan of pro wrestling and seeing people who are not wrestling fans just making social media joke posts about it, not anything like harmful, and like sad headcanons and all that. Then like that shit just unironically ruled.
Oh, absolutely. Two of our friends, one of whom, we talk a lot about movies with Nova, and then another friend of, online. Neither of them were wrestling fans. We've since shown Nova some wrestling matches for fun, but neither of them are wrestling fans, but they connected on it because of the power of like sports. Because what's so good about this is how Fritz von Erich's actor is just the perfect kind of terrible father figure, terrible masculine father figure that's like always pressuring his boys to join the sports. And I think that was something that they very much related with, in sort of like, being from areas that were very, very, very pushy about, high school sports and kind of the damage that can do.
You want to single out him. I want to single out one other major part of this movie. Mm-hmm. And I think it is the thing that helps get this, it helps bring this film together. I will never forgive A24 for not pushing harder to get Zac Efron for Actor of the Year last year. Absolutely. Oh my God. I know he played Ted Bundy in that movie. Extremely wicked, shockingly evil and vile. But, I'll admit I haven't really followed him since seeing him in Hairspray. He was in High School Musical.
I think the last movie I saw him in was Neighbors, where he plays the frat boy.
Was that before or after The Disaster Artist? Because he did play the Chris R in that movie,
he was
but
Chris
that was like a minor role for him. But I'll say in terms of transformation and the portrayal of Kevin, like, holy hell, you can feel his entire demeanor change throughout the course of this movie.
Absolutely.
And he is almost unrecognizable. Like, he looks like he could actually fight somebody as a pro wrestler in this.
Yeah, he looks like a pro wrestler in this. There are some absolutely amazing performances. One that struck me was, I remember as we were watching it, Harley Race. Because whoever they got to play Harley Race looked and sounded exactly like Harley Race. And in fact, that's where like the big issue with the movie comes. Because look, you can kind of talk about how as a biopic it has some issues where they had to cut a whole extra Von Erich brother out because Otherwise, audiences wouldn't believe the story, even though it was real. It was too real that they had yet another brother who also committed suicide. Like, holy shit. But the big thing is, it's unfortunate because this happens during a very climactic part of the movie, in that they got a Ric Flair who does not even try to do Ric Flair's voice. Like, he's not...
Hello, guys, I'm Ric Flair.
Yeah, he's not bad as an actor, but he's not Ric Flair. And it's the reason it stands out is because the Harley race is perfect. The Dallas Sportatorium has never looked better. The Von Erichs all look incredible. And then you have guy who is like doing Ric Flair without doing like one of the most recognizable voices in wrestling. Like everyone knows, you know, with Ric Flair, everyone has a Ric Flair impression, you know, to be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo! You know, everyone has the Ric Flair lisp and he doesn't even try. It's weird.
Halloween costume Ric Flair.
Yeah. And it sucks 'cause it's like, that is a dramatic monologue is the Ric Flair promo, you know, that builds to an incredible moment. But I forgive it because so much of this movie is so good that, again, you want drama. You want a movie about how they grind young wrestlers to dust, both about how beautiful wrestling is when the crowd is there and how miserable it can be when you're back in the locker room. So that's why that's my number 10.
So I'll say whenever we do every director, person, and topic under the sun for our podcast, we should just do an A24 movie podcast.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, A24 is already getting a lot of credit that it doesn't deserve for bringing back elevated horror. So I don't know. I mean, listen, they may have a great track record. I may love many of their movies. But I think that there's enough A24 podcasts out there.
I just think it's funny that they kind of do. They're like the exact opposite of LJN. They just go ahead and see like, oh yeah, this is very A24 coded. Let me go ahead and buy this up. It's now like our movie.
And then they make Y2K, which is not a good movie.
Now, my number 10 is actually another dramatized period piece. This one is actually a Western from my birth year of 1993 by the father of Panos Cosmatos, who directed my all-time favorite film, 2018's Mandy. That is the movie Tombstone, starring an all-time lineup of stars. You have Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton. They bring the story of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday to life in this all-out gunfight tragedy. I'll say that this is the movie that I would show to people to get them to watch Western films. This also has kind of a reputation as sort of a dad movie, but,
yeah.
You know, I'll say that in terms of it being this big action-y movie in general, though, there is some really cool undertones for this film as well.
Oh yeah, like there's the thing that really drew me into this movie was, I mean, Val Kilmer's amazing. Of course, we've talked a little bit about Val Kilmer on one of our previous episodes, Batman Forever, which, by the way, go ahead, we'll listen to that one. But the passion between Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday is undeniable.
So now film is art, and art is subjective and open to interpretation. I think that you'll find that with a lot of my favorite films this year, they're ones that deal with my own queer identity. So that's going to be an obvious influence on me. I think regardless of your personal interpretation of it, you know, the dialogue is iconic. The world is fleshed out. The gunfights are magnificent. You don't have to see this as a queer subtext. However, like, this is something that appealed to us. I think you can very clearly see these two as kind of a gay couple, and Duck's struggle with tuberculosis can be kind of an AIDS parallel, especially to like this time frame.
Absolutely. And on top of that, it's just such an emotionally charged movie. It is a passionate movie. It is a movie that looks great. Everyone is just giving it their all in terms of their acting. There are so many killer mustaches, and it really does build out to one of the best shootouts in movie history. Like, it's just plain cool. And also it's eligible for Kingdom Hearts, so we need a Kingdom Hearts world. based on Tombstone, I think.
Perfect. There's another Yowie that we can connect it to.
Perfect.
I'll say, part of me wonders if we did the Earp and Holiday stuff to ourselves. It's just like very funny. I remember the first scene with them together. I just go ahead and say out loud, "Oh, they're fucking."
They are! Everyone knows. There's only one couple in movie. We've had a lot of great Yowie couples in movies this year, in terms of our favorites. But they're up there with Johnny Utah and Bodie.
I think between this, Christine, Riddler, and Two-Face, we're going to need a new tagline. We're going to be the only podcast with the guts to tell you whether or not a movie is Yowie.
We need to do the Yowie tournament, like best Yowie of the year. It's like those shipping polls that show up on Tumblr.
Now, I'm just going to warn the audience for the rest of this episode before we move on. Queer couples is definitely going to be a reoccurring topic with me. I'm going to play Death of the Author in attack mode. You can't stop me.
No, it's wonderful. My number 9 movie on my list was David Lynch's Inland Empire. What a movie this was. David Lynch's, as of this recording, final feature film from 2006, where Laura Dern stars as an actress cast as the lead of a remake of a previously doomed foreign film. And it is 3 hours of trip. And I loved it. Listen, we had a big, we're huge David Lynch fans. If you couldn't tell from the art on the podcast feed, the tape's right there. Fire Walk with Me. We finally kind of got through Twin Peaks: The Return as well as the rest of his filmography last year. And Inland Empire was the last one that we finished. And I compare it very, very favorably to Paranoia Agent by Satoshi Kon, which was kind of his last major project before his passing. Because both of them have this serious cynicism to them that is not... it's not really... There's a cynicism to them that is in some ways uncharacteristic. Not completely, but you kind of understand that these both Inland Empire and Paranoia Agent came out of definite frustrations, shall we say. So to talk about Inland Empire, David Lynch is such a gorgeous director in everything he does, to the point that it feels like intentional and, I guess, sarcastic that he shot this whole thing on crappy-looking digital. Thematically, symbolically, and cinematographically, the movie is as great as you would expect, but everything is done digitally. It's full of these kind of strange digital effects. As mentioned, it's about an actress being cast in this remake of a foreign movie that was kind of said to be cursed, said to be doomed. There's a lot about Hollywood and how it chews up and spits out actors and actresses at an alarming rate, but also how it chews up and spits out art. And that was what really, really, really affected me. Like, in this world of remakes and video game remakes and re-releases and AI upscaling of Interstellar 5555 and just all this anti-art garbage, for a director to stand up and scream at the top of his lungs, "What the hell are you doing?" It hits even better now than it did back then. And it also helps that it's probably his most nightmarish film. Like, even Lost Highway wasn't quite this terrifying in terms of just the single images in this movie. And it also has some of his funniest moments, and probably one of his most upbeat endings as well. So I really think it is a wonderfully shot film full of great contrasts and a whole lot to say.
So you mentioned that this was the year that we finished watching David Lynch's other films. What we say for the end, at least one film, which we'll get to, that is very well acclaimed. But for the most part, every single film, I think, other than the ones that we had seen, were ones that I've heard are divisive. And I think what shocked me here is that I even loved David's more divisive movies. To me, Dune, maybe it's not as good as the current series we have going on. I'll say that it falls apart in the last third. But, now that the Chalamet movies are out, we have kind of this faithful adaptation of Dune. I think you can see it as a real fun alternate interpretation.
With incredible production design.
Yeah, controversially, I'm going to say the scenes with the Arconans may be a little better in David's
honestly,
version.
I honestly prefer how David's movie looks.
The Straight Story, I've heard people say it's not really a David Lynch movie in its tone. I know, bullshit.
Yeah,
but
bullshit.
Even out of his comfort zone, arguably, like, he still just nails it. It is a film that has such this love of humanity. And then with Inland Empire, I've heard people say that he goes way too over the top, way too incomprehensible. And I just don't agree. I think half the reason people say this is because, David is never really open on the meaning of his movies. So I think that plus the nonlinear elements to this story really don't really come together. And I think this was probably the film that confused the most people.
Yeah, like you need to understand that it's a non-chronological story that is intentionally kind of twisting itself.
However, I am going to say that if you really break it down, it really just tackles a lot of themes similar to his other films. Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, even Twin Peaks have this sort of pinpoint view of Hollywood and films where it has both like a love for this material while at the same time it recognizes how much this stuff kind of blurs the lines between it and reality and how ugly it may be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, I'll say this was probably my second favorite David Lynch movie I saw this year. Spoilers.
Okay.
It did make it in my top 50, just not my top 10. That said, I had a hell of a year. This was a fantastic movie. Like you putting this here at number 9, great choice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been, like we mentioned at the top, a very, very, very tough year for great movies that we've seen this year. So, like I said, I closed my review of this movie talking about how we cannot allow things like, AI upscaling and like poorly done rewriting of our art, or whatever David Fincher is doing with the 7 Evan DVD by adding a 4K release by adding doors to hotel rooms and fixing burnt out lights. Like, we can't allow that to happen. And I think the last line of my review was, let it die if you must, kill it if you have to. And that's how I feel, because we need to take a knife to our own nostalgia at some point, and we need to let art be art. And we cannot allow, the studios to take that away from us.
My number 9 is a documentary, and it's only a little over an hour and 15 minutes. So you don't have much to lose just by checking it out. It is called Paris is Burning, and it's a documentary about drag queen culture circa the 1980s. It is so nice to have this piece of history just existing in the world because, drag to me is an art form that I've always adored. It's just this reflection of inner beauty. It's so tied to the LGBTQ community. And to me, this movie looks to highlight the participants in drag balls, which it's a very heavy Black and Latin American drag queen culture. And it doesn't shy away from the history of these events, also, the suffering that these groups will face. While at the same time, it stresses the importance and the cultural significance of this movement. Between hate crimes and AIDS, so many of the queens in this movie really passed away in the last 30 years. Since this movie came out. So it does, break my heart that we've lost them. But, it does touch me that, proof of their existence and their talent and their art still lives on and that they won't be forgotten. That's, I think, the beauty to me with Paris is Burning. I just think that it is this wonderful reflection of humanity in a scene that I think many people don't really get a chance to see. And many others, they're afraid to look into this world.
Absolutely. I would even say that this movie taught me a lot. The thing that really struck me was all of these kind of queer communities and these drag queens kind of forming what they called houses. Just these groups of people kind of under a house name, under this sort of name to find themselves, to find their connections, to find ways to improve their art. Really is a beautiful record of this time. It's funny because, like, for the longest time, there was a comic that I read about queerness and about worry about not fitting into the queer community and finding your own kind of self in queerness, and how it can differ from what the broad views of transness and queerness are. But it's funny because it was called I've Never Seen Paris is Burning. And I really resonated with that comic. But the problem is now I have seen Paris is Burning. And I resonated with Paris is Burning. So sorry, buddy. No, it really is a beautiful comic, but it's also a beautiful movie. And I'm just going to leave with a single quote that really moved me as they were saying it and continues to move me through this day, which is, "You leave a mark on the world if you get through it and a few people remember your name." And that's all it really is, huh? Like, that's all it has to be is, just do your art, make a few friends, and, get through it, and, do well by a few others. And I'm very, very glad this movie exists.
So we're going to be moving on to my number 8. And we'll circle back to your number 8 soon.
Yes.
So my number 8, I will actually be sticking with the 90s. And this year was the first year that I actually watched Fight Club. So I actually originally watched this for an article that I haven't gotten around to writing yet. But the crux of it was about the current state of media literacy right now. And I really wanted to look at famously misinterpreted films like this. And then I also saw Starship Troopers the year before. So
that kind of kick-started the whole thing. I forgot you were still writing that article. I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Thank you. So I feel, more comfortable with my queer interpretation of this movie than Tombstone, given the fact that Chuck Palahniuk, the writer for Fight Club, the book, is actually a gay man. Mm-hmm. But I'm just going to say, guys, this is just Jennifer's Body for Gay Men. We have a story about a man who is utterly obsessed with this really, really cool man. And the two of them just start a cult where they just pound each other. Just men are pounding each other day after day.
Pounding each other like this is their only outlet. They got no outlets in their day-to-day life. All they can do is wait until the sun goes down, get into their little fetish outfits, and pound each other to high heaven.
It is insane. I can't comprehend the amount of people who watch this movie and see this film as criticizing the way that women control the modern world, because that is literally the shit the villain spews in this movie.
What's unbelievable is there's a whole through line of this movie where the main character, the narrator, does meet up with a woman who he really actually resonates and sees himself in. And that's kind of an important point, that, the narrator has people he sees himself in. And, I don't want to go into too much detail. For those who wish to experience Blind, I really do recommend it, because that really was a wonderful movie. It wasn't in my top 10, but it is in my top 20.
There's such a great story in here about, overcoming toxic masculinity and embracing your true self. And yet it has the reputation of every toxic dude bro has this poster on their wall. And unfortunately, crazy. I've seen it.
Yeah. It's an understandable stereotype, but that's so crazy to me when so much of this movie is more about the fear of coming out and then realizing that maybe it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be okay. It's a lot like The Matrix in that regard.
None of it matters, and it's beautiful.
Exactly.
On top of that, I'm going to say this film is just extremely stylishly edited. It nails some truly incredible scenes. I fucking adore the ending so much.
The ending is incredible. The music is so good.
And I'll say, my first watch of this was wonderful, but it was actually a rewatch of this movie that made this film magical to me. Like, we got to watch this in a big group with other people, each sharing their takes on it. And I think that was the moment that this really cemented itself into the number 9 spot for me.
Absolutely. I love when we get a chance to really watch with people who are as curious about film as we are, because I feel that everyone has something to say. Everyone gets something from each movie, and everyone gets to share their experience. And that's just fun to me. And Fight Club is a great one for that.
And next up is actually our number 7.
Yes, we do share this number 7. It was really funny revealing the lists to each other and being like, oh, same ranking.
Same ranking. It's our second and last David Lynch movie today.
Mm-hmm.
And it is The Elephant Man. Filmed entirely in black and white, the movie features John Hurt as the deformed John Merrick and Sir Anthony Hopkins as a doctor who saves him from the hospital.
Unbelievable performance from both men. Let me just quickly say that.
The tagline of this film is a true story of courage and human dignity. And I think with most films like these, you're meant to feel bad. But, the movie can't help but make them still feel like a little bit of a punching bag in most cases. And I think here, your sympathy is always with John, but also the doctor who first acts out of pity, but also genuinely becomes his friend with it. And I'll say that, this film is a sad movie. The ending had me a mess. But you'll say that David does this incredible job at understanding him in a way that I don't think we saw in film later until Tim Burton became a director. This is probably his most Burton-esque movie from Lynch. It's definitely one of his best, and the best film kind of like this that I think I've seen. It and The Straight Story, I think, as I mentioned, that movie could only come from a place of somebody who had a good understanding, but also love of humanity, love of life. Like Elephant Man, this is the other one.
Yeah.
And the I am not an animal scene in context is heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. You need to understand, like, with David Lynch, just how full of empathy he is for the misfit and the outcast. My personal story with this movie is very complicated. When my grandmother died, when Nan died back in 2009, we went to her former home for the funeral with my mother's sister and my cousins. They were all there, kind of taking care of, different affairs. And I remember that they had, I guess it was Sky Cable, whatever. It was kind of like cable, whatever England had at the time. And I guess my Nan had it at the time too. And I remember The Elephant Man was going to come on one of the BBC channels or something. I don't remember. And my cousin wouldn't stop talking about it, about how they were going to show The Elephant Man. And I just remember her, like, the day after talking about it. And she really made it seem as though the entire point of the movie was, oh, wow, John Merrick looks horrible and, scary and blah, blah, blah. And I was not in the space to watch this movie. Not that I would have wanted to watch it. I didn't know who David Lynch was in 2009. And so when this movie was coming up, I guess on our to-watch list, I think I was the one who bit the bullet and was like, look, I'm going to have to watch this eventually. I'm not really looking forward to it because of my bad memories, but we'll see what it is. And what it was this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful empathetic portrait of a really wonderful person. And, Anthony Hopkins as the doctor is incredible because there's this scene early on where when you first see John Merrick, before he becomes John Merrick, when he's just the kid, like the elephant man, deformed man in a cage. And you see the light of sympathy and not just sympathy. It's not just pity. It's actual understanding and love in his eyes as he's like, tears start to fall from them as he's like watching this happen. And he knows, okay, I have to rescue this guy, and it really is such an impactful scene. And the big thing that, David Lynch, more than anyone, I think, understands, again, is he has so much love for humanity. The ending is very, very, the ending's very tragic, but it's very spiritual, which is something I know, a lot of David Lynch's movies have. It has a very, similar kind of feeling to the end of Fire Walk with Me, where this is really the only way it could be a happy ending, because I don't think David Lynch sees a life well lived as something to mourn. And I think that he wanted to show with this movie, with John Merrick, just the fruits of a life well lived. And it is a beautiful film to look at. It is a beautiful film atmospherically. The writing is incredible. And it's funny because Mel Brooks actually produced this. This is another thing that kind of tipped me over the edge to actually want to watch this, was because in Mel Brooks's autobiography, which I read this year, but he mentions The Elephant Man as one of Brooks' films, which you may also recognize from The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, one of your favorites.
Yes.
And he talks about how he met David Lynch in a Frisch's Big Boy, or I guess it was just a Big Boy at the time. This was before it was Frisch's, because it was like the only place that David Lynch wanted to go. And during shooting, it was cold, so Mel bought David Lynch a coat. And during a Lifetime Achievement Award ceremony, he actually brought the coat out because he still had it like 40 years later and showed it to the audience. So, there's a lot of love in this movie. And Mel, tapping David Lynch as the guy he thinks can produce The Elephant Man and direct The Elephant Man. I mean, it was the right choice. And it's such a cool kind of thing of Hollywood connections of Mel Brooks tapping David Lynch because Eraserhead was a beautiful black and white movie and he knew he wanted The Elephant Man to be in black and white. And yeah, it's just a great artistic achievement, full of love, full of life. And I loved it as well. So our number 6, we've had a lot of very emotional films of all kinds. And number 6 is one of my favorites, definitely quickly became one of my all-time favorites, in Inside Llewyn Davis, directed by the Coen brothers, who have directed several of our favorite movies, The Big Lebowski, Barton Fink. Yeah, we're no strangers to the Coen brothers. And their 2013 story of a grieving folk singer in the 60s who navigates a cold, gray life. It's moving, it's subtle, it's humorous, and it's tragic, and it's just what you expect from their best. This movie is wild to me because I think we're the only people who watched it in the way that we watched it.
Okay, listen here. I got my soapbox here. I just want to say, first up, I love this movie. Oscar Isaac does such an amazing job in the role. It is funny. Like, you're right. How many people just have completely different interpretations of
There are
this?
people who look at this movie and see the character of Llewyn Davis and compare him to Barton Fink. What the hell are you on? I love Barton Fink and I think you're fucking insane.
We talked about this in detail in private many, many times. We did find some people who shared our opinions, but not many. Now, I'm just going to say it here, put this out into the world in a podcast. I believe it was the intention, the full intention of the Coen brothers, that Llewyn Davis is a closeted queer man. Mm-hmm. At the very least, bisexual. And now, I'm not saying that Davis is going to be justified for everything that he does in this movie. I think the movie makes a very strong point to point out that his shut-off nature is very self-destructive. Mm-hmm. He has a lot of very bad tendencies. But I think there's so much of this movie that you miss if you don't watch this movie from a queer lens. I think really the implication straight up is that Llewyn and Timlin, his old partner, were the couple, and Timlin's suicide, so much of the movie points you to it being the thing that mentally broke Llewyn. If you really look at him as a bisexual, it explains everything from why he closed himself off to others after this happened, and why he pursued adultery with, Jean, his friend, his best friend's girlfriend, just for like that small amount of comfort that he feels with it. And, outside of that, there's the scene with John Goodman's character.
Incredible performance. Another amazing John Goodman performance.
The fucking Coens love this guy, and he loves working with them. And, as long as the two just exist in this world, they'll always rely on each other, and I love it. Mm-hmm. And he asks Llewyn just straight out if he's queer because he's a folk singer with a cat.
And, hey, Llewyn does not answer.
Llewyn doesn't really have like a response for that. And then the two biggest scenes that hint towards this is when Llewyn begins singing early on in the movie, and one of his friends jumps in with Mike Timlin's part, his old partner, and Llewyn just goes off on her for it because, in his mind, this small moment is her just kind of taking his partner's part here. He just fucking hates it.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know how you cannot get this from the movie, is the thing that drives me crazy about this.
And then it all comes together for like the final part of this movie. A little bit of spoilers here, but also, go ahead and skip forward if you need it. I think late into the movie, the film uses Fare Thee Well, a song about a woman who loses her husband. Directly, they chose that song in particular to be the one that Llewyn is hesitant to play again because to him it's a duet with his partner. And then by the end, Llewyn decides that he needs to make a change with his life, and then one of his steps is playing that song solo for the first time. Mm-hmm. And the version without Mike even goes as far as to change the lyrics slightly. When it's Mike and Llewyn performing, they have the lyrics, "I had a man, long and tall, moved his body like a cannonball." Meanwhile, Llewyn's solo changes it to, "I had a girl, long and tall, moves her body like a cannonball." I'm sorry, but are you serious here?
Yeah, like, come on.
It frustrates me because I don't think there would be any question on this if Mike, or if fucking Llewyn was a woman. Like, people just take the fact that Llewyn had sex with Jean as though it invalidates this theory. Like, there aren't gay parents or gay people who have sex with the opposite gender out of moments like this, out of depression, or just, people who are attracted to more than one gender. Like, I'm sorry to just go off on this one specific point, but, it's fucking insane. You don't think Mike might have killed himself because he was an artist who was closeted and depressed living in 1961 America?
Yeah, and it's so obvious. Like, yes, applause. I am applauding every word you say. And it is unbelievable. I do not know how you can watch this movie and not understand the heart of this movie, because that simple fact, recognizing that this movie is an iceberg that does not give you everything, but it gives you everything you need to know, but it does not spoon feed it to you. Because as long as you can pick that part out, every single decision in this movie makes so much sense. And more than just sense, it emotionally means something. Like, you are absolutely nuts if you don't think this is the intention. Like, and to be fair, this movie has more than just gay yearning. It's obviously, it's a Coen Bros movie. It's very funny at points. There's the music is incredible. There's a hilarious scene where Llewyn is in a studio recording some janky, Soviet era folk song about going to the moon, and it's funny as hell. And there's a cute cat in this movie.
Gorgeous cinematography, too.
Yeah, and it looks great, but it is so very obvious that the gray look of this movie is meant to evoke and meant to symbolize Llewyn's depression and, how his world feels. And it's crazy. How are we some of the few people actively speaking about this?
I'm going to say, I think unfortunately some people really, really need things spelled out for them. We may get to the topic of this, but the film I Saw the TV Glow from 2024, perhaps you've heard of it.
A little bit.
It is very famously a trans narrative. However, I've seen a few people this year say, well, why didn't they say that it was a trans narrative? Why didn't they say that this character was transgender? Like, we don't literally see Justice Smith in a dress before the end of the film.
Yeah.
And this isn't like a major part of it. Like, okay. It's weird. Like, but also, I think that this is why I need my article on media literacy.
Yes, exactly. Please. Now you can bring this up. So that was more of a rant than a rating, but man, oh man, Inside Llewyn Davis. I will say I was pretty shocked that this was your number 7. I thought I was going to like this more than you did.
I love this movie.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And speaking of wonderful, shall we move on to this next movie? That was on both of our lists. Speaking of gay people and major life events. Kamikaze Girls!
Woo!
Man, this movie is pretty much the opposite of Inside Llewyn Davis in every way. It is 2004's frenetic explosion that occurs when 2 high school delinquents, a clothes bootlegger obsessed with the fashion and attitudes of the Rococo period in France, and the tough-talking leader of a biker girl gang, meet up and navigate the difficulties of life together. What a movie. It opens with the same way as Casino by Martin Scorsese does. And unlike Casino, it never drops the ball. The slow-mo car accident, it is like, what a hell of a way to start this movie. This movie is bursting with life and with energy. And when I was thinking about this movie, last year my number 10 movie was Linda, Linda, Linda from 2005. And what I loved about that movie was how much it kind of placed emphasis on the parts of life that aren't that important. But when you're in high school, you feel that they are the most important thing in the world. And this movie is kind of like a mirror image of Linda, 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 in that rather than being sort of excitement about the small things in life, it basically blows up so much of life into this absolutely ridiculous, sort of over-the-top, wild story about friendship and gangs and characters named Unicorn Ryuji and pachinko gambling and all this stuff. But at the very, 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 very center of it, when you wipe away everything, it really is a moving story about your first love and, life as a teenager. And it's so cool for it.
I saw so many comedies this year. We saw classic Buster Keatons. We saw films with very frenetic energy and sense of place that, stuck with us, like Detention, like Airheads, Better Off Dead. And then you also have modern ones that pick up a lot of traction, like Hundreds of Beavers and the Baby Assassin movie. So we were spoiled for choices when it came to comedy movies. But I think with Kamikaze Girls, you get a little bit from all these movies, as well as something that is just, incredibly ahead of its time. Like, I look at this movie and I see so much of the 2020s, in a sense, how they will edit their films in kind of this animated style, really. The film manages to blend so many numerous styles, too. One of them actually is like this anime style that they do sequences in. I just want to say that I absolutely adore the main two and their dynamic so much. They are just extremely funny.
Absolutely. It is really funny when you consider that they both are delinquents. Just one's a Yankee and the other one is pressured into a life of crime by her bootlegger father. Just all the fake brands always killed me. And the way it all kind of comes together into it's a world where it doesn't matter how much of this is real, because you know that what you have with someone else is. And I think that's important, in that the unreality of everything that happens in this movie lives to kind of throw the real parts, the heartbreak, the love, the loss, the grief, into sharp relief. And I love a movie that can do that.
On the topic of this one, before you're like, oh, they're making this queer-coded again, listen, all of Letterboxd made this queer-coded. You look at the reviews for this movie, I swear to you, every single one of them is like, these bitches gay, good for them, good for them. So that was the biggest deviation on our top 10 list, but it's not the only one. So that said, it is mostly sequential from here on out. Next up is Aaron's number 5 and my number 4. It's a Wong Kar-wai movie called Chungking Express. It is gorgeously shot. It's this charming, fun romance movie. Sort of a 2-segment anthology about cops who find love in closer places than they would expect. And they would always come close to this confrontation and then, something would happen. Mm-hmm. So in the first story, it's about this woman in a blonde wig who is a part of the seedier side of society. And in the second one, it's about this food worker who has this love of music. And Kar-wai just has this very magical touch with his romances here. He's like a modern day weaver of fairy tales for the modern day, in a sense. Between this one and then his more famous film, In the Mood for Love, I think you get 2 different kinds of romances. In the Mood for Love is this quiet and mature story about 2 souls whose lives are being forced to change against their will and figuring out how to process it together. And then with, Chungking Express, it definitely gets bittersweet, but I think there's so much more hope and pop energy to it. It's definitely a story for the 90s.
Yeah. It's a bit of a noir. There's a wonderfully seedy kind of element, especially in the first story, of kind of the undercover cop who falls in love with the person he's supposed to be tailing. And then, you have the beauty of the second story. I mean, the way that this movie really comes together is through Faye Wong. She is gorgeous. She is more than just gorgeous. She's enchanting every time she's on that screen. And her love with the beat cop who just stops by her food stand as she dreams of going to America. It's wistful. It's melancholy. It's strange. It probably helps that I love the song California Dreamin', because you will love if you love California Dreamin', it'll really hit you the first time it plays, and by the 10th time it plays, you will be out of your goddamn chair. Like, it is beautiful. And what I love about this movie is that yearning sort of 2 ships in the night kind of feeling. And Brooks, our friend of the podcast, friend in general, described the ending of this movie as the last needle drop can stand up with some of the greatest pro wrestling entrances of all time. And he's completely right. I just remember there's a scene like near the very end, without telling you what happens, where a song plays and, it is enchanting. And it's at that moment that I knew this was easily like a 5-star film. The only thing I don't like about this movie is that the only way to buy it with Criterion is by buying a giant Wong Kar-wai box set. And don't get me wrong, I love In the Mood for Love very much. I love this movie very much. I thought 2048, was that what it was? Or, yeah, 2048's okay. Like, that movie's fine. No stress. I've never seen Fallen Angels. I don't think I've seen, there are 2 other movies in that I've never seen. 2 out of 7 or whatever ain't bad. But if they ever announce a standalone 4K of Chungking Express, I'm getting it.
I think few can paint a scene quite as beautifully as Wong Kar-wai. He bathes actors in color and he presents you these whimsical sequences. Faye with the music, like the woman in the blonde wig. You get to see all the scenes of, the underground, and it's all in these very vibrant red settings. A little bit like, I guess, The Shining Hotel is what I would compare him to. Mm-hmm. It's something that's very eye-catching, but also at the same time, it feels like something that's very closed away.
Yeah, there's cool greens and bright reds and, the scenes where they're cleaning the apartment in bright whites. It really is a very colorfully beautiful movie that uses a lot of color as mood, which I really enjoy.
It's a film about how the small moments and people in your lives are the one you'll form relationships with, and how those relationships will shape your existence. God bless it.
So moving on, we have a movie that, yes, this is only on my list because you'd already seen it.
That's true.
This is a first-time watch for me. 1954, the original Godzilla.
I think I've shown you the Americanized version first. I'm sorry about that. I do like it. I've seen the original version. I've seen the Americanized version many, many times.
We watched Raids again. I've seen Destroy All Monsters. I've seen, King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong and Godzilla X Kong. But now I've seen the original, and here's the thing about the original. My God, it's the classic debut of the Big G, where in the aftermath of World War II, nuclear testing has awoken a prehistoric monster who rampages through Tokyo, and it more than stands up. It's amazing. Like, it is sad, it is scary, the practical and, weight of each effect and each hit and each crushed building, feels real. It has impact. And there are two specific scenes that really break me in half, which is first with the reporters on the tower who are reporting the Godzilla attack as they go down and everything is destroyed. And then, the woman holding her children close as they all kind of close their eyes. It's tragic. It is emotional. It is impactful. And all these years later, it really is as good as it was the day that it dropped. And he's as powerful an allegory as ever, all the way down to the government, questioning, did we cause this? It's amazing stuff. But you're the big Godzilla fan, so take it away.
Nah, I'm with you. I'll never forget the part you mentioned there. The mother hugging the kid and saying, "We'll be with your father soon." Jesus Christ. I think the acting in it is incredible. You really feel that the actors are conveying what it's like to have lived through this tragedy, the atomic bomb being dropped.
Yeah.
And we watched this as part of our October horror marathon that we did. And I'll say I've watched this movie many, many times before, but something about this watch through of it, it was my favorite one that we've ever had. I think maybe having seen -1, it might have given me an extra appreciation.
Yeah,
of it,
I was going to say last year -1 was also in my top 10. So good 1-2 punch here from Godzilla, who is our best friend.
I want to say that was my number 2. God, I love -1, but I think once you accept the fact that this is a film that's going to feature a guy in a lizard suit, which is not poorly done, mind you.
Oh no, it looks great.
I think you will agree. But if you can get over that hurdle, I think you'll find this film holds up extremely well.
Absolutely. It was fantastic.
It's this emotional story about humans, and then there's always a human story with the Godzilla films. This is although I'll say that this one and -1s are the big ones that, land that story. Mm-hmm. Better than anything going on with the monster. Mm-hmm. My number 3 was one that I was lucky to have experienced in the theater. And then as I finished it, I actually added it to my all-time favorites. And I thought to myself, whatever film that I could watch after that this year was going to have a hell of a time trying to top it. My number 3 film of the year is the directorial debut of Dev Patel. And it is the stylish martial arts revenge thriller called Monkey Man. So it is such an evocative movie, very beautifully choreographed. You get some breathtaking cinematography with it. And Dev Patel both writes, directs, and stars in this movie, playing a man who fights in this underground pro wrestling league in a monkey mask, while he's looking to get his revenge on the 2 people who are responsible for his mother's death, which is this evil police chief and then this cult leader, spirit guru, who are really at the top of the chain in India.
Yeah.
And, I'll say from its first trailer, I was invested with Monkey Man. So I was overjoyed that it ended up living up to my expectations. I love revenge movies. Everything from the actions to the visuals are among the year's best. And there are so many great little sequences here. I think without going too much into detail, because I think it is a wonderful film to seek out, At one point, Dev Patel's character does end up getting taught in his ways how to fight against these foes by just a group of really, really cool trans women in India. And this is just like a major plot point in the movie. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's cool as hell. It's very, very cool. It's a movie where I feel like Dev Patel realized, hey, this is going to be my one chance to do this. And I'm going to come out of the gate swinging. I'm going to be the action hero. I'm going to be the director. I'm going to make everything look absolutely crazy and bone crunching. Maybe it's not all going to land, but you are not going to find another movie this year that looks as lavish as Monkey Man. The thing that I appreciated about it was, I'm just going to say it. Dev Patel, please make a Like a Dragon movie.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, because as we were watching this, we had just recently got a hand on the most recent Yakuza Like a Dragon game, Infinite Wealth. Mm-hmm. And then as we were playing through that game, we kind of paused it to watch this movie. And there was a part of me as I was watching that was like, well, this is reminding me of Yakuza, but I don't know how much of that is the fact that I'm playing through Yakuza. If I go ahead and make this comparison, I'll probably be very annoying about it. Yeah. It's just because it's like one of the things I'm currently focused on that I'm making this comparison. Then, I get online, I go ahead and not avoid it. And then like all my friends are like, hey, this is basically like a Yakuza movie.
Yeah, no, it's literally, it's like you got the revenge plot. You got the fight up the tower. It's a beat 'em up. It's a beat 'em up as a movie. The action is bone crunching. The music is awesome. Like it even has the dramatic, battle at the top of the tower, just like in pretty much every Like a Dragon, Yakuza game. And it's awesome. It is awesome. So yeah, Monkey Man was pretty great. It really, it is a sumptuous looking movie, and Dev Patel is gorgeous in it. So, thumbs up for me.
Thumbs up for me too. My number 2 is Erin's number 3, and it is by the director Tarsem, best known for the film The Cell. It is called The Fall, and it is a movie about a young girl in 1920s Los Angeles who lives in a hospital and is entertained by an ongoing fantasy story that's told to her by its newest patient, which is a stuntman who is currently recovering from an injury. We see this world brought to life through her colorful perception of the story. You get a chance to see into her imagination. And I'm just going to say, let's ignore for a moment just how hot Lee Pace is in this movie.
Everyone talks about that because they're right.
He is fucking gorgeous. Like, I know that he's mostly like, I think he's a Lord of the Rings guy, but like it really, spoiler alert, Lord of the Rings might actually end up on next year's list, because I have not actually seen through all the Lord of the Rings movies.
We're probably going to do a marathon at some point.
So anyways, I have a plea for any creatives out there, to which I consider myself one of them. So one of my favorite movies of all time is the Studio Ghibli film, Whisper of the Heart. Now, if we aren't counting Cagliostro, I'd say it's even my favorite from Studio Ghibli, because it captures the importance of making art, and it creates one of the most touching and inspirational films for creatives of all time by telling the story about a writer making her book and her inspirations, instead of telling a story about, the story itself. And this gave me some of that same feeling. It endears itself to this relationship between the two characters. One that is admittedly built on lies. You can tell that. It's obvious from the start that the stuntman is trying to use this to get himself some medicine. He's basically entertaining this story, just stringing her along with it. Mm. But she cares for him, and she cares for what he creates. And in the process, we don't want to see that relationship severed. Yeah. It is a film that is made for the empathetic dreamers. And I just felt myself enraptured with this story as Alexandria, was enthralled with his story in the movie.
Absolutely. It reminds me a lot of The Princess Bride in that it's just so sweeping and epic and creative. Beautiful, too. It is absolutely beautiful. I love everything that they do, where you hear the narrator like tell a story beat, but you can tell that the mental image that the girl has is not that. At first, I was a little like confused until it clicked in my head that that was what was happening. The big one is that affects the entire story is being from, a silent era movie stuntman. The stuntman mentions that one of the characters is, quote, an Indian, which to him, he means a Native American, kind of a classic Wild West character. Whereas the girl is seeing sort of an Indian prince, like from India, with the robes and the kind of the turban and the regality of it all. And it's super, super cool. It's such a fun detail that really adds so much flavor to this adventuring party, and to the story as a whole. And every single part of this movie just looks so good.
I love how her interruptions and her like insistencies are like, this should be added to the story. Just like, the stuntman just ends up adding it, but also we see the characters just debate back and forth.
Yes.
Yeah, because of that, it's hilarious.
Oh, it's so funny when they do that. And yeah, it is gorgeous. And the way that it kind of shifts tone as the storyteller feels differently throughout the entire movie. Which, and the way that it goes between the story and the real world, it is enchanting. It is beautiful. It looks incredible. It sounds incredible. And the new restoration on Mubi is, it's beautiful. It's amazing. So yeah, if you love adventure stories of any kind, and want some really emotionally impactful stuff, that movie is probably our biggest, out of all these movies, probably my biggest surprise. In that I went through it being like, well, don't know anything about this movie, and then it making that big of an impact on me. Like, I don't even think when you suggested we watch it, I don't think you knew that Mubi was even doing a restoration. You just heard about the movie.
Yeah, I saw that one of my people that I was mutual with had watched it, I think, before it even dropped on Mubi. It was one of those things that I think he caught like a limited screening.
Right. Now, my number 2 movie of the year, and trust me, this is a debate. You can say my numbers 1 through 3, you can put them in any order and be correct, but this is just where the chips fell. My number 2 movie of the year is one that, now that I've seen it, I am safe in agreeing with Siskel and Ebert that this is one of, if not the biggest Oscar snubs of all time. This is Do the Right Thing. It's a Spike Lee joint, a 1989 film about racial tensions between an Italian pizza parlor owner and the all-black neighborhood that serves as his primary customer base. One of your favorite movies.
That's right.
You showed this to me as what we do every Valentine's Day is, which I guess we'll keep doing this until we run out of movies to do this with. I show you a movie that I've seen but you haven't. You show me a movie that you've seen but I haven't. We watched the Criterion Blu-ray, and it looks incredible. But yes, Do the Right Thing. Wow. What a movie this is. This movie is so real. What I mean by that is Spike Lee creates a neighborhood absolutely packed with archetypes and types of people, immigrants and minorities and real tension that you've seen in real life. Everyone is exaggerated to some degree, but you have the sweet talkers, you have the old men on their porches, you got, the kid who loves to listen to the radio, you have, the slackers at their part-time jobs, you have this real tight-knit, real community that is built and built the movie until one night makes it all come tumbling down, and it is unbelievable. And yeah, I am furious at the Academy retroactively for not nominating it for a damn thing, because it is ridiculous that it got snubbed, because it looks great. The script is incredible. Every actor is in this is absolutely knocking it out of the park. From John Turturro, we were talking about Barton Fink earlier, Giancarlo Esposito, way before he was typecast as Just Play Gus in Breaking Bad again. Spike Lee himself as Mookie. My God, the guts that it took for him to direct himself as the lead and have it be the right choice.
Spike Lee is amazing in this. You know, watch him in this and She's Gotta Have It. You get two completely different performances, both amazing, and he isn't even an actor by trade. He's a director who uses himself in acting roles.
Like, he doesn't even seem like the same guy in either movie.
He wears that badge better than anybody, I feel. He's not just like a cameo like Hitchcock. There's not like an imbalance with it like there is with Stallone, where I think Stallone is like more of an actor than like a director. I think for sure Spike is more of a director than an actor, and he does absolutely make it work. So you're right. I first watched this movie in 2022. I think had this been my first time, I might have put it my number 2 as well. I'll say that what I've always loved about the movie Friday growing up was, on top of it being a very funny movie, it was the sense of community in it that I could always feel watching it. And I think similar to that, the city of New York itself is a character in Do the Right Thing. It's a film that grips you on each of the characters' decisions and how it affects everything like around them here.
One of my favorite movies of all time, when I watched it, and one of my favorite movies of that year, which I think was last year, was American Graffiti. And the reason for that is because it's such a beautiful snapshot of a single night that you know that as soon as that night is over, everything is going to change for these characters. And it's that same feeling of sort of this approaching, I hate to just say approaching dread, but sort of this snowball effect you see rolling and rolling and rolling until someone smashes a window, you know? And it's a story about how racism is not solved by an individual. You know, racism is systemic. Racism is not just one person. There's all these different things that kind of contribute to gentrification of racism, to, you know, the eventual way that this all kind of folds out. And it is a tragedy to see it play out how it is, but it's also one of the things where it could have only happened this way because of everyone in the people involved, like, making it this way. And it's fascinating. And also it's cool, man. It just sets up so much, and you really do understand just how this community works, to the point that it's like, it's almost like a period piece of like, damn, I wish I could be there. You know, I wish I could be part of this. I mean, you don't by the end, but, you know, I think that it is kind of a discussion about warring philosophies to answer a question that has no real answer. And it's so smart and so well done. And Spike Lee's pretty amazing.
I love Spike so much. I think his joints absolutely deserve the arc treatment on our podcast. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll be honest, I don't know if we'll be able to get to him this year, but I would love to aim for him as one of our next 5 arcs after King. But yeah, no, like, I fucking adore this movie. I think this film asks for your investment in the story and the characters. And I think if you do put your faith in it, you put your heart in it, I think it does reward you. Now, I think it's time we get to our number 1 movie.
Absolutely. And for the longest time, I mean, I was wondering, you know, can anything top Do the Right Thing? Like, if you had asked me this a few months ago, when we had first watched this movie that shares our number 1 spot, I'm going to let you all know that now, I would have said, I probably would have had these two reversed. I probably would have had this at number 2. and Do the Right Thing at number 1, but it was our second watch of this movie that really, really blew me away. And it is an instant classic. Our shared number 1 movie of this year is 2024's I Saw the TV Glow. Jane Schoenbrun's Lynchian masterwork, following Justice Smith as Owen, a young man, quote, reflecting on his life and the memories he shared with his classmate Maddie and the secrets that reside within the TV show The Pink Opaque.
Very clearly based on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, and I do not use the word Lynchian lightly. As mentioned, this is the year that we finally watched Twin Peaks: The Return, which Jane Schoenbrun has said straight up that this movie was inspired by. And if this was just a pale imitation of my favorite director, this would not be my number 1. But it is so much more than that. What I love about this movie, and why it's at number 1, not only is Justice Smith absolutely incredible, same with Brigitte Lundy-Payne, just absolutely nailing it. Not only does this movie look great, have an incredible soundtrack, have deep, yearning emotions that pulse through every single part of this movie. If you've heard about this movie, you've probably heard, including earlier, we talked a little bit about this on the very podcast, is that a lot of it has to do with the trans narrative. I don't disagree with that assessment, obviously. I think it's very solidly a wonderfully trans narrative. But what I love about it is that it uses a homosocial lens to tell a story that can reflect on a lot of different types of people. It tells us this isn't a simple story of, this isn't a queer story in the simplest sense, which I love. This is not a story that can be interpreted as queer. This is a queer filmmaker taking a queer lens and telling a story that can move someone who, even, a cis person, a heterosexual person, anyone who has ever felt disenfranchised and disillusioned and stuck and miserable with their life, or had any kind of fear that they are, making the wrong choice, that they are choosing comfort over their joy. And it does it in such powerful, meaningful images, words, terms, and it does it by reflecting on, I guess, the terror and power of our nostalgia in ways that, I think can really be appreciated by most. I know that we had a very unique experience with this movie the second time I mentioned, which I do think really solidified it as my top 1.
Absolutely. Let me jump into that. This is way too funny not to document on the podcast. Now, I just want to say I adore this movie. Obviously, we heard great things. I think the day that I watched it, I was a little bit hesitant because I was feeling down and I wanted something a little more uplifting, but you said that you really wanted to watch it and I went with it. And, even though it wasn't what I wanted, it left me just a sobbing mess and made me change my favorite movie of 2024 afterwards. I think the main two, Justice Smith especially, he's fucking amazing. I think between both, the subject matter, the obvious inspiration of David Lynch, how the film was so well told and it wasn't afraid to go for the story that it should have told. It just gave me one of the most personal connections I felt about a movie in over a year at that point. Mm-hmm. And I know,
it really, really moved you, which, was nice, it took me a bit, I think.
I think it was until we had a showing of this movie in my parents' house, where several of our close friends live, that, you were right there with me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it was very precious to me because it was actually in the same basement with several of them where we actually watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer together. I don't want to name anybody by names here. We showed this to 2 trans women and 1 cishet ally.
We love our cishet ally.
And by the time that the movie ended, the trans women were all crying. Erin went to go hug both of them and then me again.
Yeah.
Because of how well the story was told. The cishet friend, a few minutes into the credits, went, "Oh, that was pretty good. So is there a post-credits scene?"
Oh, it was the perfect way to break the tension.
And that's the thing. Like, I think in their confusion, it helped to lighten the mood so much after everything.
Oh,
and I love them so much for that. But, this did lead us into jokes about Mr. Melancholy being back in the MCU.
Yes. And there being a post-credits where,
we get an A24 Avengers universe with Marcel, the shell with shoes on, the Green Knight, the Whale, the last black man in San Francisco, Jimmy Fails, and they all need to team up to stop Mr. Melancholy.
I'm Carrie Von Erich.
And I think even if you don't think that you'll ever love horror, I think that if you're a closeted queer person or a queer person currently pursuing a life that you're nervous to live in, this film is for you. I think Jane did an incredible, phenomenal job. And I've still yet to see We're All Going to the World's Fair, but I think after seeing I Saw the TV Glow, you bet that that's going to be on my personal list of goals to watch for 2025, and it might be on next year's list.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to everything that she makes after as well. I hear the next thing's going to be sloppy and sexy, so I'm all about that. I thought it was extremely cute when we were watching the movie for the first time, and the opening kind of credits to the Pink Opaque show up. And it's just the Buffy font. And you immediately pointed at the screen and went, "That's the Buffy font!" It was adorable. And I'm really happy that you got to have that personal experience with the movie. And it really is such an incredible piece of work that I think it's going to change a lot of people.
So, just to go over our top 10 one last time, my number 10 was Tombstone, my number 9 was Fight Club, my number 8 was Paris is Burning, my number 7 was The Elephant Man, my number 6 was Inside Llewyn Davis, my number 5 was Kamikaze Girls, my number 4 was Chungking Express, my number 3 was Monkey Man, my number 2 was The Fall, and my number 1 was I Saw the TV Glow.
An excellent, excellent list. My number 10 was The Iron Claw. My number 9 was Inland Empire. My number 8, Kamikaze Girls. Number 7, The Elephant Man. Number 6, Inside Llewyn Davis. Number 5, Chungking Express. Number 4, Godzilla. Number 3, The Fall. Number 2, Do the Right Thing. And my number 1, I Saw the TV Glow. So, what a hell of a year for movies, huh? When I was like ranking the movies and thinking about, this year-end thing, because we did this last year. Didn't do a podcast about it, of course, but we did this last year. We thought of our top 50 movies, and, last year I saw things like Marcel and Speed Racer and, movies that have ended up on our favorite shelf kind of thing. And I was like, man, what were my best movies of the year? And then I was like, well, I guess the best has got to be. And then I went through this like mental list of like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, just all these different incredible movies that we watched. Like we could have another hour just talking about movies that didn't make it on these lists. But that I think wraps it up. Do you have any parting thoughts before we go?
I'm really looking forward to the next episode where we do Stand By Me. We're going to try and get more episodes out in 2025. That is a promise. I know we did slow things down by the end of 2024, but we both still really love the podcast, and we're looking forward to doing more arcs in the future. I'm really looking forward to both finishing out the Stephen King arc, and then we also have the next 2 arcs planned.
Yes. We're planning ahead because we're really, really looking forward to seeing what comes in the future. And I'm excited. You know, I think we have some really cool stuff that we're finally getting to. But yeah, it's keep watching movies, everyone. Go support your local art house theater. I'm sure you have one. If you don't have one, I'm sorry. Go support your regular theater. Support your theater. And watch weird shit and take a chance on different movies. But you know, until then, thank you for a great 2024. I hope 2025 treats us all very well. Until next time, I have been Erin.
I've been Mandy. 2024, 3, 2, 1, roll credits.
Roll Credits is produced by Armbar Studios and is part of the Erin and Mandy Network. The intro and outro music is provided by Daniel Vodovos, available on Bandcamp. For more information on all of our projects, visit armbarstudios.com.